Hello, Johnny from Eurogamer here. I've been thinking quite a bit about No Man's Sky recently, probably because I think I'm about ready to stop playing it. No Man's Sky is, on paper, right up my street. It's exactly the kind of game I really like to sink my teeth into. However, I've found my enthusiasm consistently outweighs my actual enjoyment of the Space Explorer from Hello Games. In short, there's something about No Man's Sky that rings hollow. There's this enormous galaxy you can explore with a mind-boggling number of planets, each with its own ecosystem of flora, fauna, radiation levels, toxicity, weather, all sorts, and yet these worlds feel somehow empty. There's a very good reason for that, and I think it's one people have largely overlooked, one that lies in the difference between procedural generation and emergence. Now, before we get fully stuck in here, let's define our terms. With specific reference to video games, procedural generation is the process whereby the bits and pieces created by a developer are thrown together by an algorithm in order to create a new environment populated with things, whether that's crafting materials, enemies, items, or what have you. In Spelunky, that's what gives you a new cave layout each time, for instance, whereas in No Man's Sky, it's what decides the variables for each planet. What are the sentinels like, is there much plant life, and so on. In other words, it's taking a bunch of simple component parts and throwing them together to make a greater, more cohesive whole. Now, emergence is the label we give to something complex that happens as a result of simple systems interacting with one another. In Necropolis, for example, certain enemy types hate one another, so if you can kite one of those across the map to the other, they'll fight, making your life a lot easier. Procedurally generated games often lead to emergent moments like these, as the simple things that are generated come together to form emergent and more complex behaviours. You can steal an idol in Spelunky, for instance, releasing a boulder which will smash through the level, and then maybe destroy the shop, making an enemy of all the shopkeepers you encounter for the rest of that run. Two simple game elements placed randomly, interacting to make a more complex situation. In Elite Dangerous, NPC ships can run afoul of space station protocols, getting themselves blown up by vast quantities of laser fire as part of the bargain. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor's Nemesis system runs its own power struggle simulation. It also lets Caragors kill Uruk-hai. Super Mario Maker has led to some incredible levels based solely around emergent gameplay. And then there's Minecraft. In Minecraft you can get mobs to attack one another by exploiting friendly fire behaviours, and then there are the biomes themselves to think of. These procedurally generated areas are filled with different materials, all used to power the game's vast crafting system. If you're playing in survival mode, how much of that crafting system you're able to exploit changes based on what resources are procedurally thrown your way, fundamentally changing your experience. Now, the thing about No Man's Sky is, it's got procedural generation in spades, but nothing comes of it. You have all these different elements coming together to make strange alien worlds that just sit there. The animals leave the plants alone, the weather leaves both of those things alone, the sentinels leave everything alone unless you personally piss them off, and the game's races are limited to space secretaries manning desks on the off chance you'll come along and talk to them, thereby giving them meaning. The only real example of emergent gameplay I can come up with in No Man's Sky is that of animals attacking one another, and that's such a scarcity, people spent days on the internet debating whether it was even a feature in the game. The pieces that make up No Man's Sky are in many cases beautiful, and certainly when we first began to learn what this game might be like, seemed to have real potential. But the problem is none of these components really connect in any meaningful way. They don't change one another, and as a result, this game with its astounding breadth lacks a sense of depth. The worlds, while varied and colourful and interesting, become inert, waiting to see what you're going to do in order to bring them meaning. When all the worlds are staged but you're the only player, the experience simply feels empty, and that, I think, is the real shortcoming of No Man's Sky. It's a game full of things, but none of those things ever really touch. But hey, maybe you disagree. Either way, please do let me know in the comments, and if you'd like to see any other videos on No Man's Sky, you can click on one of these ones floating handily on the screen in front of you. Liking and subscribing would be great if you could spare the clicks. If not, no worries. Have a lovely day.